Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes at the Waltons. Today, I'm doing a special segment to wish a very happy birthday to David Harper. So this is my birthday tribute to David Harper. David's portrayal of Jim Bob Walton over the 9 seasons and the TV movies had so many wonderful, memorable moments. I first met David as a young, I think he was about 9 years old or something when we did the homecoming. And he had this just incredible shaggy headed mop of hair that was so adorable. And you couldn't help but fall in love with little Jim Bob there. Some of the standout scenes for me in the homecoming, of course, were the ones with Elizabeth, Jim Bob and Elizabeth in the hayloft as she cries about the rest of the family making fun of her when she said she doesn't want to have babies, she wants to have puppies, and Jim Bob trying to explain to her that she's a girl and girls have babies and that she can't have puppies, and yet the innocence of children at that age and what they understand and what they think they understand and how it all plays out in the innocence of their minds is so sweet to see. But all that fun shaggy hair hanging in his eyes, and you just wanted to sort of cuddle him. And I do remember that for those of us who weren't natural redheads, David was pretty much a towhead, not blonde, but sort of a sandy blonde hair, as was Richard Thomas. And my hair was a little bit darker brown. So for the 3 of us who were not redheads, Eric Scott, Mary McDonough, Cammie Kotler, John Walmsley were all actual redheads. So those of us who weren't, they colored our hair. And so they colored David's hair sort of a strawberry blonde kind of a color. And mine was a bit more auburn, and Richard's was, kind of somewhere in between the two. So I remember us both having to get our hair dyed, me and David, for the homecoming. So those were so many special memories about all working together on that and being out in the snow in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and getting entertained by Edgar Bergen and his 2 ventriloquism dummies, Charlie and Mortimer. Just so many fond memories of our first time working together. During the course of the series, some of the real standout episodes for me of Jim Bob's were in The Secret, when he found out that he had a twin who died at birth, and how heartbreaking that was for him to find out. And then for John to have to confirm that, and then the absolutely so touching scene when he goes in and then talks to Mama, and no words are really said, but just this wealth of emotion just emanates from the 2 of them as they share that moment together, Olivia and Jim Bob. Then in The Runaway, when Jim Bob brings home Porthos, the guinea pig, and it gets loose and it dies, and feeling like nobody's listening to him and he isn't being heard, which I think we can all feel like, especially when you're in a family with a lot of children and parents have a lot to deal with, and Olivia and John did. And so poor Jim Bob, feeling unnoticed and unheard, runs away. And so that whole storyline was a really sweet one for Jim Bob as well. Then one of Jim Bob's first crushes, when he meets Bobby Strom from In the Wing Walker, and here is suddenly this beautiful young woman who listens to him and has the same interest he has in aviation and can talk to him and relate to him, and how crushing it is for him when she pursues John Boy, and then John Boy is so cavalier with her, and it's a little bit of a coming of age there, one step of that for Jim Bob in that episode. And he is, I think, rightfully upset with John Boy for John Boy's treatment of Bobby. And Bobby is very sweet with him in her recognition of this young boy's infatuation, and she treats it very kindly. And as the strength of those sibling relationships was so evident, and in the reunion when, because of the finances of the family, Olivia makes over one of the girls' blouses as a shirt for Jim Bob to wear, and he has to go to school wearing this girly blouse and gets picked on by some of the kids at school, and Mary Ellen defends him and gets in a fist fight protecting Jim Bob. Ends up with a bit of a black eye, but that was how that dynamic of the children, that they would protect each other all the time and take care of each other, and stood up for anybody picking on any of them. So, Jim Bob was always sort of quiet and shy and a bit of a lone wolf, still waters run deep kind of character, as is David in real life. He is a very deep thinker. He is always learning, fascinated by a lot of subjects, and just very cerebral. And Jim Bob had those characteristics because I think the writers, and Earl in particular, saw that in David. And so those sorts of storylines were then written for us to see those elements of Jim Bob as in the way that he interacted in life and with the family and with situations that he encountered. We certainly had some fun moments, as in The Bequest, when Mary Ellen wants to try out dyeing her hair because Martha Rose has dyed her hair. But Mary Ellen doesn't quite have the nerve to do it on her own hair. So she talks Jim Bob into being sort of a bit of a test dummy, guinea pig there for real. And she dyes Jim Bob's hair, testing out this sort of hair bleach in a way, and ends up turning Jim Bob's hair pink. So that was not a good outcome on that experiment. For me, and I think for a lot of you as well, one of my absolute favorite scenes of David's as Jim Bob was in The Tailspin, when Jim Bob changes Cora Beth's tire, her flat tire, and the two of them have just a beautiful exchange where Cora Beth is vulnerable and confesses that she knows people make fun of her and that she's overdone and blown, but just sort of expresses her own vulnerability. And Jim Bob is, rather than being harsh with her in these circumstances, is very kind with her, and just a beautiful scene between the two of them. And that was the beautiful simplicity of David's work, that he never overacted. He simply was. He was just so truthful on screen that you saw right into him, even when he was being very still and very quiet and not looking to stand out. So his work was always just beautiful. We watched Jim Bob go through various heartaches as well. One of his early love interests was Patsy Brimmer. And so he had a number of episodes where that little relationship was moving along. And David himself has said that at one point, Debbie Gunn, who played Patsy Brimmer most of the time, she was unavailable. And so Eileen McDonough, no relationship to Mary McDonough, but the actress Eileen McDonough came in and did the episode The Great Motorcycle Race. And David has said that, he had a definite crush in real life with Eileen McDonough and would have loved the opportunity to perhaps pursue that relationship and maybe date her, but it didn't end up happening. So both in real life and for Jim Bob on screen, Patsy Brimmer's relationship didn't pan out. Other episodes for Jim Bob where he struggled with this were The Calling in season 7, which I covered recently with Mary Frances, that he fell for her and then she left to pursue her calling to become a nun. And then in The Silver Wings, when he develops a crush on Betsy Randolph, whose husband is away, and Jim Bob just develops this crush, and it starts off as a friendship, but it becomes more for Jim Bob, and then he has to deal with that and the recognition that she's married, and whatever happens with her husband, if he passes away, that a relationship with Jim Bob is not going to be a realistic outcome for the two of them. So he gets his heart broken a bit there too. So those were all episodes that I felt had lots of standout moments for David as Jim Bob. Along the way, we had many scenes with the boys, the teasing and all of that brotherly dynamic that would go on, and of course with Jim Bob being the youngest, he always had a tougher time, and he always had this very, very close relationship with Elizabeth because of the two of them being the youngest. So they tagged around together a lot, both on screen and off screen. They were sort of buddies in real life, hanging around between scenes and running around the studio and playing on different sets and playing cops and robbers and bandits and cowboys and Indians, all those sorts of things with all the wonderful sets that were available on the studio lot. So, it has been years and years of us developing these really close relationships. And as I've often said, we are still very, very close. I talk to David regularly. We don't live that close, so we don't see each other in person very often, but that bond that we developed from the time he was about 8 or 9 and I was 13 will be there for the rest of our lives. And I treasure that. So happy birthday, David. I hope that you are celebrating and enjoying your special day, and we're sending lots and lots of love to you. Thank you for joining me for this special birthday tribute to David Harper. I will be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.